Hi folks, it's Lilia back here, and this video is called What English Teachers Don't Tell You. If you're a language learner who doesn't have much insight into the theory and the academic bit of teaching English, you might find certain facts that you will discover as a result of this video interesting or even surprising. So today I'm going to share some interesting teaching ideas from a teaching perspective as to what I think learners might be aware of when being in a language classroom or having their one-to-one lessons with a private tutor. When I go to a language centre, when I do my voiceovers, I always find it really interesting to find myself behind the scenes and see what it looks like from a perspective which I don't necessarily have admission to during my regular hours. So here are some of those things. Each activity has a purpose behind it, whatever it is, whatever you have to do in class or in your private lesson. If the teacher asks you to do a fun activity, such as a game or a board game or a competition, or if the teacher asks you to work in pairs with another student, or if they ask you to work in a group or work on your own or do an exercise or whatever it might be, I'm fairly sure that the teacher has a purpose in mind, because everything that happens in a language classroom, provided it happens in English, has a linguistic purpose behind it. You may not necessarily realise it, but in case you're using English throughout the activity, the chances are that the teacher has planned it beforehand, and now what they want you to do is practice your English as much as you can, even if it is a game. And some students often tell me, what I don't really like about language centres is that all we do is just play and we don't really do any serious work. And this is okay, this is a valid concern, but I think it might be necessary and essential to realise this before you go and complain about your English teacher. That brings us to the next point. Pair work doesn't always work, especially here in Slavic countries. Why should I talk to my partner if I better talk to the teacher even worked on my own? And this is a valid concern as well. Very often pair work doesn't work for certain students. Students might just feel a bit shy when they have to talk to another person and they'd rather work on their own, or some of us just need a bit of time to process information in our heads before we just bring it out in a form of a sentence or an expression or a performance of an exam task or anything like that. So pair work does not necessarily work. There is no universal rule that states how you can learn English fast in a short period of time without effort or struggling. No, there's nothing like that. Everybody's got their own individual learning style, and I find it really cool that people are investing their time into studying the variety of learning styles existing in the nowadays world these days. I think it's actually quite cool. So if you have discovered your own learning style, you may have to multiply that by the fact whether you are an introvert or an extrovert, and you might also want to discover if you like collaborating with other people, or you make a better learner and remember things better if you're just working on your own. So it might be the case, and you shouldn't really worry about that too much. If work in pairs is wasted on you, there's nothing to worry about. It just might mean that you've got a different learning style. The next thing that English teachers don't often tell you is that classroom time is not enough. I know many teachers talk about this, and I always tell my students that if we choose to have 2 lessons per week or even 3 lessons per week, it does not mean that the student should really forget about English for the rest of their week. What really creates a great language learner is the effort you take because you want to take it. If you're studying English in a class, the rest of your classmates may not necessarily relate to the things that you really like, so you could choose your own materials to listen to or to read when you're on your own. And plus, I would always recommend filling every day with a little bit of English to make sure that you're surrounded with it and you live in that English atmosphere, because if you're after a fast progress, this is something that you might want to consider. Here is an interesting neurological thing. You may not perform the same on different days. Or in other words, there are certain days when your brain activity is rather low. So you can't really sulk, you can't really damn yourself because you can't focus well enough on a certain day. So especially in a language centre or with a private tutor, you may have a certain schedule, a certain timetable. You might have your lessons on certain days during the week. And sometimes you may notice that On certain days, your level of English just skyrockets, and on other days you might just feel a little bit low, under the weather, you feel a bit slow, but that is not a denominator of your progress. So bear that in mind. Don't worry about that. I feel that when I film my videos. It also depends on the type of personality, okay? It also depends on the type of person and our biological clock, all right? So you may be a lark, you may be an owl, anything like that. So bear that in mind. It happens. It doesn't really indicate anything if you tend to apply yourself throughout the learning journey. It's not an indicator of a bad progress, so of a slow progress. You might be a fantastic language learner, it's just not your day. So let me tell you something about teachers. You may not actually realise this, but teachers are afraid to mess up. Teachers are afraid of making mistakes just as much as learners are. And it's better to keep that in mind, because very often learners tend to challenge their teachers. I think I was a really nasty little learner when I was a little girl, because I really like to challenge my English teachers, and I'm very guilty of that. I think that what we do need to bear in mind every time we walk into a classroom or whatever we do in our lives is that we're interacting with another human being. So being kind and compassionate to a teacher and understanding and caring is a great thing to write in your memory, okay? So I really want you to realize that teachers don't only teach your class, they also try to plan quite a lot, and they have the writing tests they have to check all the time. And not only do they focus on your particular group or your particular class, but they also focus on a number of other classes if they're teaching for a language school, or in a number of other students if they're giving one-on-one lessons. Try being compassionate to your teacher. Realise they have their own personal needs and their brain activity may be quite low on that particular day. If it happens, if it happens on a regular basis, this is something you might actually consider as a step to take if you do want to change the teacher or change the language school, or you might just have to talk about that to the teacher, as we'll discuss in the following step. But most importantly, being human, respecting others is key to happy existence. And last but by no means least, it's okay to talk to a teacher about your preferences and concerns, even if it doesn't really have to do much with their teaching, and it really has to do with your own idea of what perfect teaching should be like. Or if you do want to tell the teacher about your personal preferred learning style, that's also cool. And I really want to make this point very clear. I've had a situation quite a few times in my life where I talked to a person who was studying with the Language Centre for quite a long time, and their particular class didn't really fancy the teacher. They didn't really like the teacher, okay? So what they did is they went to the Director of Studies. So every school has a Director of Studies, a person who's responsible for planning lessons, like arranging different classes throughout the week for different teachers. And that whole class, they just gathered, they came all together, and they went to the Director of Studies directly. They talked to the Director of Studies and they said how bad the teacher was. And they didn't even talk to the teacher. You see what I mean? So this is quite a nasty situation, I think, because if I were that teacher, I think I would feel really, really badly about myself. That would really undermine my confidence. That would totally belittle me as a teacher. And as a human being, I would have probably felt depressed if I had a conversation like that with the Director of Studies afterwards. So what I want you to bear in mind is that teachers are also humans, even though I know that very many of you, I think the majority of you, are really concerned about this fact, and you really know about this and you really respect your teacher. I really like it when in my class students are respectful towards what I do, when they trust me. So I would be a proponent of a classroom where everybody trusts each other, where people are not afraid of making mistakes. And if the atmosphere tends to be a little bit more tense than that, that might just bring an extra layer of nervousness to my teaching. If you're a language teacher though, and you think there are some other things that learners should know about, make sure you post me a comment below this video telling me what the thing is, something you might have discovered in your career. And plus, don't forget to click on the bell under this video to subscribe to my channel to learn more about teaching and doing exams and teaching English happily with a focus on a student's well-being. And don't forget to give this video a massive like. I hope to talk to you again in my next videos. Bye!